Welcome to Decode Dune, an exegesis of the Dune universe.
I would like to start with some shout outs of people who have been particularly social with us, especially I think on Instagram is where it feels like it's people you don't know. I want everyone to know, if you're listening to this and you are a follower of us on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, we do have a growing community and it's just our name, Decode Dune. Now, we do have a quote unquote business page and then we have the community. You can like the business page, you're going to get the same stuff as Instagram, but the community is where there's some interaction happening. People are talking about, do I really need to read all the Brian Herbert books, or what do you think about Brian Herbert's writing? Obviously, that's the son of Frank. We have people asking, if we have any interest in talking about comparing the Wheel of Time, which also has like an Amazon Prime show coming, versus Dune. So there's more interaction like that happening. So if you are listening to this, definitely check us out on the Facebook community. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
We'll welcome you there. It won't be just a private conversation.
What are we calling our are we going to go with Worm Riders?
Yeah, let's go with Worm Riders.
It's a little risque, but I'm willing.
If you were a friend of mine a couple of years ago, I used to make videos of me in a loincloth eating mangoes off the floor. That's provable. I can include that in the show notes. So if you're not comfortable with being called a Worm Rider, then you're just not down with that sensual life. So
there you go.
So, but anyway, I want to give us some shout outs. Natasha K sent a really nice, heartfelt message. So we're recording this on 3/14 Pi Day. So that's been posted. We sent a little thank you via Instagram and what have you. So that's in the past now when you're listening to this. But Natasha K sent some really nice, heartfelt messages, including like a leather sort of book cover that her father made for her with some quotes.
Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, that was really awesome. There's a guy named John McEwen down in New Zealand is representing Middle Earth as a fan. He said he really enjoyed the podcast as sort of supplementary info and sort of that deep dive he felt he really needed. Hold on real quick.
I wish people could have seen what just happened.
My laptop is apparently not plugged in. Where the fuck?
Mike was at the mic. And then he goes, hold on real quick. And then he fucking just he did the walking down to the basement routine where he just disappeared under his desk. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, there he goes again.
Okay.
All right. We're technical difficulties. This is the time where you'd have the test pattern on the screen.
Yeah. I'll just editorialize for a minute and say we've been in this pandemic thing for exactly a year as of like a couple days ago. That's when like the NBA and South by Southwest started shutting down. I've worked from home for years, but I traveled almost at least once a month. And then obviously would, go out to dinner and stuff like that. And stuff like that's reopening. But I have basically relocated my office to my front porch as possible. So I'm doing a lot of
where the Wi-Fi is the best.
I'm going to get an extension. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so John McEwen,
or just get the vaccine so that you become a 5G.
I don't know where this joke's going. Help me, Jeff.
Well, I understood that if you get vaccinated for COVID, this is my understanding of the current science.
Okay,
you get the good internet because you get Bill Gates microchipped, and then you have your own. you become a beacon of 5G. Exactly. So, among the many good reasons to get vaccinated. Becoming part of is it 5G or I don't know.
I don't know. That's a deal with the devil I might do. Go out to the wilderness, be your own router, be able to enjoy all the bennies of good internet, and then go airplane mode when you want to like chill out. Okay.
Exactly.
I love it. So, okay, John McEwen, he's repping Middle Earth down in New Zealand. We also talked a little Blood Meridian the other night. In alternate universe, Jeff, you and I are doing a Cormac McCarthy podcast as well.
Oh boy, yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
That's a real thing we should do.
Yeah, and then,
misunderstood. He's a heck of a guy. Just a lot of high comedy.
Yeah.
Disguised in grief and abject terror.
Yeah, and then a gentleman named Alan Higgs has also been showing us some love. These are all DMs, people sliding into our DMs in Instagram, and so it is awesome to hear from people.
I wonder if he's related to the Higgs that
Higgs boson.
Yeah.
I don't know. They say people are more likely to send hate than love, like they're more likely in the shitty internet era to send you things like your podcast fucking sucks, and Mike, you have a monotone voice, and Jeff, you ramble or whatever, right?
Wait, I do?
No, that's something you thought people might say, right?
That's so hurtful.
I don't think you ramble. I know I ramble, but where I'm going with this is we have received nothing but positive love from people. So people have only taken time out of their day to send love,
which makes us precious snowflakes.
Yeah.
So no one should give us negative feedback now. It would destroy us.
Yeah. Speaking of feedback, we posted it at the end of the last episode. So we went in the last episode, Jeff went real deep into organizational psychology, where people fail to integrate into new positions. I thought it was really excellent. I've re-listened to it. The question we had for people is this the side of bacon you want with your Dune coverage? And so hit me up again via the Facebook group. Public post, that's fine, or slide into our DMs, comments. Also, we have an email, decodedune@gmail.com. Anyway, that's enough for announcements.
Does slide into our DMs mean what you think it means? I'm old, so I'm not exactly sure what it means.
I'm playing,
but it's a good thing.
I'm playing
slides
with the
into
language.
My DMs, right?
Yeah, let me tell you, when I'm sprawled out on the couch on a chilly, rainy night in Los Angeles, and I'm preparing for this episode, and someone slides into our DMs with positive comments about this podcast, I get titillated. It does mean slide into the direct message. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you meant for a literal translation. Jet wants to confirm. It literally means sending us a direct message. Jeff, that is what it means. But there's a connotation of it being a quasi-sexual.
That I'm so old that I don't that I don't know internet language, which is true.
Oh, right. Okay, final shout out, final plea for feedback, final shout out, our boy Connor McGovern out there in Lawrence, Kansas. He commented, I guess in our original interaction, I didn't know this, he started BJJ about a year ago. So good journey.
Congrats, brother.
On your path. Keep with it. We've all had challenges in and out of training in the last while.
Wrist lock the world. That's really your mission.
Prison
Don't
rules.
Make friends.
Prison rules.
Yeah.
Okay. But so let's dig in now. So here we are. Page 89. Jessica has had some high stakes conversations. I'm going to say 36 hours now. She talked to Leto. She talked to Yue. Paul had his incident with the Hunter Seeker, and then she talked to Shout Out, and then Paul talked to Shout Out as well. So, all right, so Jessica's, she's continuing her kind of getting a lay of the land in terms of the house, and she comes upon a mysterious door. It is a mysterious door that she would not expect based on it being an ovular shape. She comes to find that it is a palm lock, and using her Bene Gesserit trickery, and she says it directly, she learned how to manipulate a palm lock, or she learned how to do that in basically pick a palm lock. So a palm lock, I as far as I understand, would be sort of your sci-fi. You put your hand on it, and it reads your there's a certain group of approved people based on their fingerprints.
Yeah.
And okay, so that would be a palm lock in this context. Yeah. And she knows how to pick a palm lock, if that's the right terminology in this particular thing. And she ends up being able to get into it and finds that she is facing yet another door. And this one has an airlock. It's sort of your classic space sci-fi. It's a wheel that you turn, and it air seals the chamber, protecting it from obviously any intrusions from the outside world. And she's like, what is going on here? She opens that. So she wonders to herself, why would you have an airlock in a house like this? And it occurs to her, a special climate. So she says, I got to explore this, opens it, and she's, looking at the exclamation points and the just her thoughts. She's obviously extremely excited by this. Basically, she opens the airlock into a small sort of tropical garden that is obviously, the moisture is kept inside with the airlock. It has tinted windows so that the sun, due to the atmospheric conditions of Arrakis, this is something we didn't really talk about before. Basically, the sky is sort of a slate gray from what I recall seeing. It's a very strange color. It's not blue like we, are accustomed to here on Earth, or
not much water. Yeah,
right.
Not much.
People in Caladan also have like a nice sky blue, like we have here on Earth. So the sky is very strange. The sun appears very white, and in this case, they put filtered glass in this. This is not an arboretum. What's the word for this?
I think arboretum is close, but yeah, it's along those lines.
It's a secret garden she had. All right, so she's very excited. This is obviously yet another display of wealth and ostentation. If one palm date is the water for 100 fremen a day or 100 people a day, this has got to be thousands of people's daily water. Is just to the extent that in a closed system like this, it's actually probably recycled a little bit more. This is just a really a high sign of wealth and ostentation, and basically just a giant fuck you to anyone who's out there in the greater Iraq is struggling to survive. The next bit is helps move the story forward. But do you think there's anything more to this than just further developing the story?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start with the introduction, which we normally do, right? There's the Princess Erlan's writings, or whoever, right? So she says, what had the Lady Jessica to sustain her in her time of trial? Think you carefully on this Bene Gesserit proverb, and perhaps you will see. And the proverb is, any road followed precisely to its end leads precisely nowhere. Climb them, and I think that's maybe a reference to Zeno's paradox, or it may be a reference to the fact that the map is not the territory.
Right.
Climb the mountain just a little bit to test that it's a mountain. From the top of the mountain, you cannot see the mountain. So we get a little bit of Zen Sunni proverb thrown in here. Flowers. I guess we're made to think, or we're led to the conclusion that this is just an example of the Harkonnen excess.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear to me that this is an artifact of the Harkonnens.
It is not. Well, ostensibly it isn't, because we have to remember. In fact, let me parse this out. It may or may not be from the Harkonnens. What we definitely know is that the most recent resident of this house are actually the Fenring, the Duke Fenring. And he is more aligned with the Emperor Shaddam Carino. They're very close friends. And it even says a little bit later in this chapter in a coded message that the lady Margot Fenring is not able to provide more information about the happenings on Arrakis during the Harkonnen era, because frankly her husband, well, assuming that it's if factual or truthful, that she doesn't have any more information. She claims that the reason she doesn't have any more information to offer is because they don't know, because her husband is a Carino man. He's a loyalist to the Emperor, so he doesn't have a lot of specific information about the Harkonnen plot because he's not in those meetings. He's an outsider, right? So Jessica's pondering, is this a nice sweet thing Leto did for me? No, it couldn't have been. There hasn't been time. It is very clear from the way this secret garden, we're just going to keep calling it that, the secret garden.
Do you know what the secret garden is?
I mean, in the Bruce Springsteen song, it's very obviously an allusion to a woman's vagina and sort of the intimacy of. I mean, this was like peak 1996 Jerry Maguire, can you really access the inner depths? I don't just mean physically of Renee Zellweger's character, but like, can you truly get this woman who obviously has her life story? She has a child prior to her relationship, can you really, like, can a man ever really know a woman? Can he ever really unlock her true intimacy and essence, or will he fumble around and fuck it up and create situations where she's more likely to retract than sort of open up, right? I mean,
like, you're so on it. So
I've spent a lot of time analyzing Jerry Maguire and a lot of time driving through country roads of Ohio, listening to Secret Garden.
It's amazing what you could sort of just pick up from the cultural air. So there was in 1973, Nancy Friday published a book called My Secret Garden, and what was essentially revealed is that women had sexual fantasies like men do. Of course, this book predates that by about 8 years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't predate Jung's perspective. For Jung, flowers, now we're talking Carl Jung, who does feature prominently in this book.
Right.
Flowers are a symbol of health, well-being, spiritual awareness, that kind of thing, at least when they're in full bloom. So you notice there's always a tension, always a dilemma with Herbert. So she finds this amazing garden. Right at the end of the chapter is she finds herself holding a dead stem. I just link this back to what does Jessica have to sustain her? It's an important question, because we're sort of focused a little bit on what's happening globally. We're really focused on the men here.
Not much very slight character development here in this book in general.
Right. And the action is all being driven by these men. And then you've got these women who are sort of mysterious and have powers, but whatever. The men are still having their fight. The men are still moving everybody
Let's
around.
do one mic check.
Right. So Jessica is about to carry the weight of all the forward momentum. So I just find it interesting that she finds this place, that she and Paul have the conversation that they have, and that both sides of that sort of the shadow.
We are currently
side,
recording,
which is the dead stem or whatever, the dead flower, and then I can't remember what
sounds like. You guys sounds good.
In psychology, but
probably the animus or the anima. Well, that's generally like a sexual projection, but same thing, same-ish thing.
Yeah. There's just I guess what's not the shadow is generally positive. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what I think about when I think about this. Yeah. So she steps sort of into this weird little unreal mystery that is
it's not part of the original house. It was to the degree that might have some symbolic meaning. It was not part of the original house. It was added as like a boutique thing later on. Again, it was a nice thing that probably we have to assume maybe the Count Fenring did for his wife. Yeah, so I want to get to that conversation. Because there's a lot more meat in this chapter. So there's a notepad. There is a note from the Margot Lady Fenring, commented before. He'll come up later in the book. He is a loyalist to the Emperor. The note basically says, "May this place give you as much pleasure as it has given me. Please permit the room to convey a lesson we learn from the same teachers. The proximity of a desirable thing tempts one to overindulge. On that path lies danger. My kindest wishes, Margot Lady Fenring." So a way of flagging a Bene Gesserit to another is to say, "On that path lies danger," similar to the Missionera Protectiva. That is a password. So she now knows that Fenring's wife, or the Lady Fenring, is a Bene Gesserit, and she has a bitter moment of realizing the Count obviously married her because they're husband and wife. In seeing the "on that path lies danger," she goes, "Okay, what's going on here? There has to be something more to this, in general, to the note, etc., in this room perhaps." And she's like, "Well, fuck. Thufir and his crew, they probably moved everything around, and because they obviously went through the entire house. They didn't find the guy with the hunter seeker. That comes up in a minute, they didn't find him originally, but so they've been through this." So she starts. This is just a very straight, to me, still a very strange bit of writing, but she basically starts feeling around, and she feels the underside of a leaf right near the pad, and there's basically something akin to Morse code that she's able to detect with her finger on the underside of the leaf that basically says, "You should know that you and the Duke are in danger. There's the equivalent, a hunter seeker basically is in Paul's room. That room was designed to attract him based on sort of the look of the headrest. So of course that would be his room. There's a hunter seeker in there. The Harkonnens have someone in your employ who is going to betray you. We don't know more because my man isn't involved in those conversations because he's a loyalist to the Emperor. But just know that you're in danger." As this literally happens, Paul actually appears, and they Paul has the hunter seeker, the broken the assumed to be broken hunter seeker in his hand. She commands him to dip it in water to ensure it's completely killed, because remember, he smashed the the tip of it into the door so that it broke, so it couldn't really stab the way it used to. But so he puts it in water. They have this conversation then about sort of who done it and what's the situation and how did Thufir miss this. And this is where I want to zero in on. There's a couple things to be said here. Jessica, so Paul, there's two things I want to comment on. We're starting to see Paul again continue to come into his own in terms of sort of a leadership mentality. And he's like, well, Thufir's getting old and he's kind of overworked. We should probably, provide some support. We could maybe be doing some of this ourselves. And Jessica says, oh, that would just make that, he's old. Yes, he is old. That would only make him feel, it would shame him and it would make him feel incompetent. And it wouldn't be a good situation. After this, she specifically says, after this incident with the hunter seeker, the place is going to be completely spotless or completely clean, which, arguably too late.
Yeah.
And the thing I want to, like I said, there's two things I want to highlight. One, in a minute, let's talk about Paul's growing maybe rift in terms of independence from Jessica, in terms of his beginning to be his own person and a man, and we could talk about some of the gender stuff there. But the first thing, Jessica continues to make assumptions about how decisions that she would make or in general could be made would negatively affect others around her. And it may or may not be worth mentioning that this is obviously regarding men in the employ of Leto. There's no evidence that she's correct in these assumptions. She totally could be incorrect. Thufir might say, fucking A, like, thank you for adding a resource to my team. But then, you look at Frank Herbert and his writing and the role of the Bene Gesserit in further books, and maybe she's completely right. And this is as much a statement, a correct statement about men in their positions of control and authority. And basically her correct is consistently that men will get butthurt and have a real issue with whether it's a woman or anyone intervening in their area of influence. And so that's a statement that I'm making, and I'm going to now pivot by putting our producer Jet on the spot and saying, Jet, you've had some you are a woman and you have had interactions with men in your life and in professional settings. And I want to get your sense. How do you think some of these guys would handle a woman coming in and being like, I have thoughts, or I have opinions, or I have like a sense of maybe alternative paths we could take here?
Well, it depends. So yeah, it really depends on how open the men are, and how open they are emotionally, and how open they are being in touch with their feminine side, and being just open-minded and being okay that, hey, a person has this, I guess, opinion. But I have definitely met a couple of what is it? I've definitely met a couple of people who have been very pressed of being wrong and being proven wrong, and being okay with being of making a mistake. I mean,
Okay.
not being okay with making a mistake and moving on from it, and being very defensive. And
Okay.
I feel like that's just an image. It's more of a mature thing, or like just an emotionally immature thing, rather than and I guess, like, more men are going to therapy, more men are like actually now being in tune with and reading more about how to like be an ally, and how to be open-minded, and how to like be basically better themselves. So yeah, I mean, of course, like a couple of years ago, maybe even like 10 years ago, or yeah, especially when this book is made,
Yeah,
a lot of women had to work around and behind the scenes to actually get what they, want, where they need to hide behind the men's power and make sure that they like play around. Make sure that their feelings and are validated.
Men's feelings.
Men's feelings are validated
Yeah.
because they know that a lot of men are, like it's that like that are ruled with aggression. Not men, actually. It's just more masculine energy. When you don't take masculine energy into keep it in check, you will get basically very, very aggressive, right?
Right. One of the things you said that was interesting. So I mean, you said a lot of really good stuff. Part of when I hear like work around, that sounds almost strategic to me. And then one of the other things you commented was more just straight up, I think, what we call emotional labor, which is the having to spend energy to prevent someone from having an emotional reaction that arguably is not actually the person doing the, let's just say a man-woman situation here. Woman has to do a lot of work to prevent an outburst from a man that really isn't the onus ought not be on her to prevent him from having this emotional reaction. So that's called emotional labor. And that's definitely a thing that is extremely draining and adds a layer and you could say time consuming. It just from an efficiency standpoint, a morale standpoint, it absolutely adds. It's like putting on a weighted vest to do even basic things. And this is common also in conversations with interacting with people who have maybe substance abuse problems as well, is tiptoeing around triggering the person around their substance abuse problem, which is if someone's maybe not in treatment or struggling with it, is not being able to kind of just have that frank conversation with them, because you're going to get a huge amount of pushback and defensiveness where, don't say the thing or else, alcoholic father or mother is going to blow up. So, okay, great. So I have to spend my life tiptoeing around because you don't have your kind of shit in order.
Yep.
Well, this was awesome. Jeff, I don't know if you want to jump in. I always look to you to have good opinions. Jeff, thank you so much. This was pretty dope. Maybe we should continue getting you into these moments in the book.
Should.
This is
we're
we're just getting started with this podcast, so we're feeling out how we do this. But
I just hear this as another. I hear this line of questions is really echoed in that opening. In that opening piece, right? What had the Lady Jessica to sustain her in her time of trial? I think it's a question. It certainly was a question for the time, right? The time in which the book was written. It's definitely a question for Lady Jessica in her own time right now, where at this point she's aware that she's in imminent danger. She's aware that her husband is, whatever the outcome, he's probably not gonna make it, right? For the husband, nothing.
Yeah.
Right. But she doesn't have a ton of like actionable information. So she still has to like think, move, and act. So you were talking about like these assumptions that she's making. Yeah, she's doing all the calculations she can do to try to find data that will actually help. And some of what she thinks or assumes might be on the nose, some of it not so on the nose. But at this moment, she doesn't really have the full picture.
Right. Yeah. One of the interesting things, there was some YouTube video, maybe we'll link it in the show notes, of a guy was pointing out what's super interesting about Dune is the frequency with which the point of view character or the omniscience of the author reader appears, and it switches. You might hear two. So in like a Song of Ice and Fire, you get these point of views. Yep. Chapters. Obviously, that was published far later. We keep referencing it because of the pop culture, phenomenon it ultimately ended up being. But you only get that character's. You can only know that character's thought, and the rest of it is assumption and then obvious dialogue. In Dune, you get this sense of like you hear what Yue is thinking and what Jessica's thinking in the same chapter. that's actually really unique. And I'm wondering if that's sometimes why people find it a little disorienting, although it's obviously such a really good read. Where I'm going with this is, that Yue is Yue is not worrying about being shamed for having his feelings. He is paranoid as fuck about being caught. In that last chapter we talked about. And then in this case, I just don't know, and that's why I wanted to put it out there. Like, what, if Thufir is so smart, I mean, is quote unquote toxic masculinity or defensiveness, how does like raw intelligence, like being a human computer, and then sort of a stereotypical masculine defensiveness about a woman eking into your territory, how does that go? Like,
oh yeah,
if Thufir is so smart, wouldn't he be like, go fast, go alone, go far, go together?
Yeah. So actually, I think you're touching on, I think, a super important point. So
Yeah.
we're maybe back to the coaching realm by accident or by habit now. I don't know.
Let us know if that's what you want. Decode Dune community,
exactly.
DM.
But what you're touching on is referred to as the G.I. Joe fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
So the G.I. Joe fallacy is the one that suggests that because you're aware of these fallacies, you're somehow immune to them. Why is it called the G.I. Joe fallacy? Because G.I. Joe knows about Cobra, right? Mm-hmm. Knows where they are, like, but still they fuck with them all the time. Mm-hmm. And so knowledge that we have sort of blind spots in our reasoning, that we are liable to fall into certain traps of thinking, mm-hmm. That knowledge itself does not help you to avoid them. Mm-hmm. It's such a common thing. You see it. Here's where you see it in Twitter all the time. So, mm-hmm. like, right, you make a mistake and somehow in Twitter, whatever you do, and then a bunch of these dickheads pile on you, and they're like, you should have been aware of this fallacy, or you should have checked your thing that you couldn't see, your privilege or whatever. Well, you can't mm-hmm. until you can. So, mm-hmm. I used to give a series of talks called Change is Hard, Don't Be a Dick About It. Mm-hmm. When someone's trying to change, especially when they tell you, it's easy for you to see them step in these little holes because you have a special perspective. Mm-hmm. But the person trying to make the change, they haven't built that awareness yet. What am I trying to say? I'm saying that the pool of available data that any human uses for decision making, mm-hmm. is shaped in part by attitudes, dispositions, beliefs. So what that means is that your belief system, your current active belief system, shapes the data that you select from the world around you. And this forms a tight little loop. It's right. Very fucking hard to pull yourself out of that loop. Yeah. It's very easy for other people to see, but it's very hard for the individual. So when you jump in on somebody and you're like, blah, 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 you're an idiot because you couldn't see it. Mm-hmm. We're not really doing that person a service. So the other thing,
by shaming them.
By shaming them.
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah. That's the dick about
it
part.
Seeing where you're going full. I'm now seeing where you're going full circle with how this happens on Twitter. Yeah, the mm-hmm. growth that is expected of people in the last couple of years, it's definitely been done with a flagellation device.
Oh, so
not a bowl of honey and sort of let's lead you to the promised land of understanding.
Well, no, it's just another stick that you can hit other people with. So this idea that because I understand that self-awareness is an important or valuable trait, mm-hmm. that does not mean that I have it. And so when I go around like whacking people with my like, you should be self-aware stick, what am I demonstrating? That I don't have it. Yeah. Right. If I were self-aware, then I would recognize that these traps are inevitable. Like these fallacies, sort of common logical fallacies, exist as a result of our specific and unique, as humans, our biology and our psychology. No, there isn't a fucker on the planet that's immune to these.
Right.
However, you go on Twitter, you would imagine that there's that these special folks have all sort of overcome every blind spot, right? This is important, I think, for this book, because what happens to people when they are secure in their little bubble like this is they start to believe that they have prescience.
Mm-hmm.
So not only am I self-aware, but I have empathy. This is an important factor in our current culture. Mm-hmm. So we got to talk about empathy for a second in a second. Mm-hmm. But they're like, I have empathy. That means that I understand how you think and feel. Oh, mm-hmm. And of course that's a fallacy all by itself. Mm-hmm. Empathy, as far as I can understand, is it enters our language and culture with sort of art and art appreciation. It is an act of projection, right? Now we talk about it all the time as if it were the end all be all of human development. But in fact, it's like a very rudimentary capability. And everybody's like concerned about whether you have it, whether you lack it, whether you use it, whether you don't. We all do. But the problem with empathy is that it's projection. Mm-hmm. So what I see very rarely on Twitter is I see very rarely the self-aware interaction where someone says, this is how I think I would feel in a given situation. Mm-hmm. Is that in fact how you feel? Mm-hmm. This is where empathy can be helpful. Hey, Mike, when I get choked out in class by a white belt, this is how I feel. Is that in fact how you just felt? Right? If we're having a sensitive moment on the mats, right?
Right.
That's the correct articulation, but that is not what you see and hear in modern culture now. What we do is we jump on people for lacking this skill, and then people that believe they have it are simply just foisting their projections onto others.
Right.
It's worse. I would rather deal with the person who lacks self-awareness and is just doing their jam, because that person, we can talk about behavior and maybe we get to some actual change that's constructive. But I think this is like, I may be in danger of supporting some certain right-wing perspectives on wokeness, and that's not my goal exactly.
Ironically, Frank Herbert, famous libertarian.
Yeah. That does not surprise me. Does not surprise me.
And maybe also sex pervert. We'll put that aside. No, listen to the Chapo review.
Chapo,
by the way, speaking with the Chapo side project of covering TV shows and how they talk about the American empire. They have one episode in, they covered Gossip Girl. Fucking incredible. Can't wait for more of them. That's just an aside. Anyway.
Oh, so just back on the strain. So just real quick. So so what we have right now in our culture is you have people's. So look, I'm neither right wing nor am I anti-wokeness. But what I am saying is that when you see someone transgress, violate a social norm or whatever, it's important that we check our own. So we may be cringy, we may have empathy, whatever we're going to exercise in relation to that. If we're to be self-aware at all, we have to check and see, not is it reasonable to me that someone would think, say, or do what they just did. The question we're supposed to be asking as a self-aware individual is, do I understand that that's a trap that any reasonable human could fall in with who lacked certain information? Mm-hmm. That's the deal. So I feel bad for people who get, regardless of their stances, even if they're awful. I feel bad for people who find out on Twitter that a particular take that they have on something is not the current hot take.
Right.
because then they just get beaten down by
Instead
people
of
who claim
educated.
instead of educated. Yeah.
Yeah.
No real change can happen. So that's back to the talk. That's the whole thing. Like, why do we have this defensive cycle in men? And now look, it extends far beyond that. Like, in the workplace, especially, I work with software engineers on the daily. There's a lot of discussion about not feeling like you know enough to do the job, not feeling qualified even though you are, right?
Are you talking about imposter syndrome, or are you talking about can you estimate how long a feature is going to take? And apparently in engineering, physical engineering and stuff.
Stop. That's not possible.
What?
Okay. Estimation of anything. But I'm making a slight joke. That's very industry specific.
Just for the people listening who aren't in software or IT, I am not in IT. I'm not a developer, but I work in the space. And apparently, getting an accurate estimate on anything in terms of debugging, featuring, or creating coding,
it's either an hour or it's 100 years. Who can tell?
Nearly impossible, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, hold on. So. Did I lose the trail? Oh, so yes. Am I talking about imposter syndrome? I don't know if I am or not, but that is a phrase that is currently used. Here's the problem with that whole idea. Competency is a thing. Like, so you might feel like you don't have the right level of skill because you don't, and when that's the case, then you need people to talk to you so that you can learn. What you would not expect is all the other all the other people in your group to just start like whacking you like a piñata of suck, right?
Yeah.
But that is normally what happens.
Yeah.
So people are very, very nervous when they come into an environment. There's this constant question of like, what level of developer am I? Everybody wants to be a senior developer or whatever. But honestly, it's just an industry in which people are just waiting to jump on your mistakes, sort of out you in public. There's a lot of that behavior. And that's all defensive behavior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are people defending? They're defending being exposed for not knowing.
Yeah.
It's a fixed mindset. So there's a
yeah. Sorry, with us being on the Joe Rogan coaching tree, I would say that he would call that cuntiness.
Yeah.
Basket of crabs kind of stuff. So,
it's horrible, and everybody does it.
Yeah.
So and by everybody, I mean everybody, even you woke developers who think you are not doing that. You're doing it.
Yeah. So I want to say two things based on kind of what you said. First, I want to make a possibly mediocre and definitely dated BJJ reference to the G.I. Joe fallacy. It's G.I. Joe fallacy, right?
Fallacy, okay. Yeah.
So it's 2015, 2016, and Eddie Cummings, back when he was in the DDS, was just going through everyone in his wake except for Gary Tonin. That one time when they ended up in the finals of an EBI, but the general, and then obviously Gio Martinez ended up armbarring him in overtime. I watched it from a hotel on the road to San Francisco. Nothing really to say there, but and that was actually a little bit later. He had a little bit of a hiatus and came back. So we're talking about his peak era when he was with DDS. The comment was, oh gosh, all he has is that double outside Ashi heel hook. That's all he has in his arsenal. And then the comments from there, like from Danaher, from Gary Tonin, his teammates, this is before Gordon Ryan was really a known player. The thing was, you know about it and you know that he's predictable. Go ahead and try to stop it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Is like the Cobra in the G.I. Joe analogy. Oh
yeah. The idea is
Eddie
that
Eddie Cummings coming for your heel. Oh, how predictable, how whatever. Try and stop it.
That's right. This is so
you know it's coming for you when you match him, and you know.
Yeah, that's right. In the I think you have it exactly right. It's the perfect metaphor. So what people are worried about is they're worried about their lack of knowledge being exposed. Because the fallacy is that knowledge is half the battle. The truth is, your ability to learn is what determines your qualities and capabilities. I'll say as a software developer, but probably in almost every area of human endeavor. I see it as non-different, right? But you cannot learn, if you are defensive around your knowledge. So some people walk around, and you've met these people. These are the high-performing assholes.
Yeah.
Who just throw their knowledge in your face. When they're tolerated, you hear like, oh, they don't suffer fools lightly, and oh, Fred or Ginger over there, they're kind of difficult, but they know so much.
Prickly.
We don't want to. The prickly. We don't want to disturb them too much because they're so amazing.
That's emotional labor.
It is emotional labor that's thrust on the fucking rest of the team.
Right. Everyone else has to walk lightly. You really have to think of these high performing assholes as someone with like the equivalent of like I mean, and not to disparage people suffering from narcotics or alcohol or whatever, but if we call it a disease or what have you, where it does create a toxic environment and it does what have you. One of the things I wanted to say real quick, the second thing I wanted to say is when we talk or when you talk about people having a limited amount of information, or sorry, that people have a limited amount of information in a world where there's an unlimited amount of data out there, which circling back to Cormac McCarthy and Blood Meridian, one of my favorite passages talks about the idea that there's more happening in the world and universe that we don't know than we actually know. And so that's just, real quick throwaway.
That permeates all of his work, including the sugar coin flip.
Right.
Which is exactly what he's saying to this guy.
Right.
It fucking matters not what's about to happen. And,
but bring it back to Dune.
Yeah.
This is literally what we said in the last. Oh, we want to do a Cormac McCarthy podcast
right now. Nested in a Dune podcast. That's exactly
it's going to be all right. But bring it back to Dune. This is literally what we talked about in the last episode, right? Yeah. Shabda, or in the Dune universe, Sabda in the Prana Bindu training.
Yes.
There is an unlimited amount of data in the universe for one person's computational power to handle. And what you need to do is in both Hinduism and then obviously as it relates to the Bene Gesserit training is you need to get information from trusted sources. What are trusted sources in at least the Hindu? And I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong.
That's okay. We have
what I read in Wikipedia and then what have you is that the idea of Shabda is the people there are certain people who are trusted advisors who can give you good information, and that is why you need to listen to your elders. That is why you need to listen to important people in your community. Now, that can be for very practical things like that snake is poisonous versus that one isn't poisonous, or general life wisdom, how to invest your resources, what have you. But that's what that Sabda in Dune, in the Dune Encyclopedia, or Shabda in Hinduism, is basically it's saying that you can only you need help. You as an individual, there's too much for you to know, and you need to be able to work or listen to people in your community so that your knowledge is augmented by their experience. That's basically it.
That's right.
So that seems like kind of Jeff. That's exactly what you were just saying a couple moments ago as well. So
I mean, the idea, I guess, if we're going to continue along the Upanishads line, what your goal is I think referred to as smriti, which is it's like lived or experienced wisdom. It's like it's what you have learned through the course of your life, and you marry that with shraddha, which is your central controlling belief. You have to be willing, I think, to allow your lived experience to inform and update your central belief system. If you're unwilling to do that, then that is really the definition of stuck. And so there are many people who are stuck in many different ways. And I guess the goal is, if our goal is to help people get unstuck, whacking them with sticks verbally or in physically, not the right way to do it. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, we don't want to dive into today's political nightmare, but a big part of it is you've got sort of two groups who are in fundamental opposition over a handful of like sort of cultural issues, not discussing policy. Why are they not talking about policy? Because policy would require that we form a deeper understanding of the other.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to just shout at people who don't think the way that I think, don't see what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And all that does is reinforce the central belief. It doesn't open it up to new data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, we go on and on about this, but in the book,
yeah.
Back to the book. Back to the book, Jeff.
So let's, because we're short on time for this chapter. I have a couple things that I want to throw out there in terms of just kind of finishing up the narrative of it. It's reinforced that the betrayer that is mentioned in the letter couldn't possibly be Yue or Yui. Jeff, just kind of put some, give us some earmuffs so you don't, get too triggered by that, because he has the conditioning. This is where we start to see the, oh gosh, could it be Thufir? Could it be Gurney? Could it be Duncan? But here's the thing I want to circle back on real quick and just kind of drop it, and it most certainly will come up again later. I mentioned this earlier in the episode, this episode. Paul is very clearly starting to split from Jessica in how he thinks should be done. And, we could look at it from just a human development or even a gendered perspective. In sort of traditional society, like true hunter-gatherer society, like the San people of Papua New Guinea, I read about them in a book called Foreign Bodies by the philosopher Alfonso Lingus. Those young girls, definitely, but young boys literally live with their moms until they start to reach around puberty. And then they go off with their dads from basically there. And then they have very limited contact with limited contact in the sense of like, they see them at like at dinner, but they're now in school with their father, learning the skills necessary to be a man. Where am I going with this? There is a stereotype, you could say, that is a let's just stick with the boy because Paul's a boy. A boy will cling close to his mother and doesn't really have much to do with his father until about puberty. And then pretty much his mother is no longer a necessary part of his life in like I'm being a little dramatic here, but it's sort of the tutelage switches. And then from about puberty to let's say 25 is when, and then from there, arguably for the rest of his life, the wisdom of a father or whatever. And again, that's what I mean. It's being very gendered. But from puberty to like, let's say 25, a boy is then going to be entering the realm of men and then consequently needs a male mentor. So what we're seeing is Paul is making a lot of calls and decisions that are starting to, and we'll see this definitely further on in this book. He's starting to be like, oh, I need to replace Leto, and that's not going to be doing things the Jessica way. And that's where some of that friction around why don't we augment Thufir, or Thufir's getting a little old and things like that. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Jeff, but we're definitely seeing that.
I would say that for sure in the world that Herbert has created, those observations about gender and gender roles seem to stick, right? Mm-hmm. If you're asking me whether I think they're valid or real at this particular moment, I would have to say no. These conventions, maybe these things are observable, maybe they're not. I think almost always it's much more nuanced. This goes back to really the individual cognition and what serves learning. Who are actually the most what does success mean for humans? Mm-hmm. It literally comes down to adaptability and learning.
Right.
So I think this idea of maleness and femaleness, there's a lot I could say
in the modern context.
In the modern context.
Oh yeah, I mean, if your mom is a software engineer, you could certainly be mentored by her if that's the direction you want to go in.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I would struggle to see where gender. There are these historic roles and there's like pseudoscience to back it up, but I don't think it's valid at all.
Yeah, the reason I mentioned that the traditional society, like hunter gatherers, is literally the idea of like you start to go out on the hunt, which is just only the men do, and then you need that 8 years, let's say, of learning of how to be a good hunter, because that's pretty much all you're gonna do.
I just don't. Even just to be super clear, we're only commenting on the fact that there are societies that were shaped that way.
Right.
That we're in no way saying that that's has some basis.
No. Right.
No. Because it could have just gone exactly the other way.
Right. Oh, 100%.
They could have just decided, and I was reading an article this morning just to round this out. In 2021, in American culture, we seem to have realized that if men carried just a little bit more, so from 0 to something, some number greater than 0, if we took care of some of the nurturing of children, that economic outcomes would be more evenly distributed. It's fucking bananas, right?
Yeah,
that it is this way, but these ideas that those gender roles are fixed, are important in some way, it's still very sticky.
Yeah.
So even in 2021, I guess we have to get maybe 30,000 more years into the future, and even then,
what? Or it'll go back to a feudal. It'll go back to a feudalism where bullfighting, which is on the way out, is back in vogue, and people will have Renaissance fair. I mentioned this once before. The wardrobe, as it's sparsely described in the book, other than the Fremen, but like the so-called white people in the book, they all are dressed like they're at Ren Fair. They're wearing fucking tunics. They're wearing Venetian pants. Anyway, look, because we're getting short on time, that's basically the end of the chapter, and just a little bit of a teaser for the future tension. It ends with the sun going down, and Jessica sees people literally sending light doing signals with like the equivalent of flashlights, and that means that Harkonnen spies are in them hills. That's pretty much the chapter. So thank you for listening. decodedune@gmail.com for your feedback and hate mail. Hit us up on Instagram, join our community, and then I think we've been going far enough along that we're providing some pretty good quality content. Gosh, I'm just going to be direct. We would love if you would consider being a patron. We're putting a lot of time and effort into this, and hopefully it's really providing. It would be great if we had people who wanted to be patrons, and we definitely want to get more bonus content out there. So that's my plea. Okay.
We don't need to make $1 million, but it would be nice to nice to have a little bit of help. Common cause.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And to hear more readings, become a Patreon supporter at Patreon/Decode Podcast.